All right, what's up, everyone? This is the Osmo.com NHL Hit the Ice Show Saturday edition. Hope you guys got in on DraftKings for the overlay on the morning slate, or I guess afternoon slate, depending on where you're from, where you're located at. But we do have 10 games. I know the NHL slate isn't that great as far as like contests you can play on DK and FanDuel. But there's at least somewhat of a reason. There's Saturday football today. There's NBA. So sort of giving them a pass today. But there is that $40 on DK. So for sure going to play. Played the early slate. Feel free to give updates in chat. Looks like the Devils are up 1-0. But yeah. Just going to go through the 10 games, maybe talk a little bit about last night. Kind of another weird slate for me. Ended up getting almost all my entry fees back, so was pretty excited about that. Carolina switched their lines right before face-off, or not right before face-off, but in the pregame rushes. So if you were on that, you got rewarded because I think they were the top stack of the night. Didn't really watch a ton of hockey, but I did see that line had a couple goals, and Furlan got in it, and he was like 5% owned. At least in the $8, he was like 5% owned, and Aho and Teravainen were like 15, 16. So, got to react to those late changes, I guess, because a lot of people don't, especially on a Friday night. So, that was good. That was probably a reason why I ended up getting back most of my entry fees, even though I didn't have a ton of Carolina. I was like 3 times the field on Teravainen, or on Furlan, because people didn't react to the late news. So I would expect we're going to have a little bit of a small crew as people are getting their NFL lineups in. I'm going to do that myself after the stream, so it's going to be really quick here today. I don't think there's a ton to talk about. There are a couple spots that I do really, really, really like. And then, as always, on big slates like this, just a couple games that really suck. So as far as what I'm entering today, I mentioned the $40, just the 20 max stuff. I think that's been what I've been doing on Saturdays, just because there's really not a lot of options, and I beat the dead horse on that. You guys know my feelings on DK on Saturday, which is primarily where I play. So probably just shouldn't even play because I don't really like any of the contests they put out, but I will play regardless. I did do projections. I did a stacks article, the usual stuff, Monday through Saturday, and now we're going to do a show here. So I didn't do a ton of like line matching stuff. I looked at a couple spots, but if anybody's in chat and wants to see what the line matching is going to be for a certain game, or if there's going to be line matching at all, we can just go through that on Natural Stat Trick together. I think that'd be a good way for you guys to see some of the ways that you can use Natural Stat Trick. That's my favorite thing to do there, and the line tool, of course. But yeah, 10-game slate, really quiet in chat right now. That's probably because there's only a few of you in here. All right, we'll probably get some more people as we go along. All right, just reading other chats right now. All right, let's do this first game, Tampa and Buffalo. We've got Louis Domingue going up against Linus Ullmark. I'm going to try to pull the implied totals from a different source, one that I won't mention, but anyways, we got a 3.7 implied total for Tampa Bay, 2.8 for Buffalo on the back-to-back here after the loss to Carolina last night in Carolina. They hit another pretty tough matchup. Should be pretty interesting for Buffalo here, though, because I think everyone's going to like the Tampa side, and that makes sense. I mean, it's Tampa. They've got 3 lines that are in play. Kucherov has just been nuts. I know Chris Wassel wrote up Kucherov in his power plays. I mean, how can you not? I've kind of said it a bunch of times. I get to Tampa 2 a lot less than other people. And looking at my first few crunches for the main slate, I'm just not really getting to them much at all, which is frustrating because I do like them, but I guess they don't generate enough chances for me. And I usually have to kind of up their projection manually because they're so good when they do get chances, especially Kucherov and Point too. And a lot of their chances come on the power play, which you don't want to just rely on the power play, especially when this line is so expensive. But they're just so good, so efficient that it's hard to even argue with this price. Now they are on the road, and they're probably going to go up against Eichel. So I like the Eichel line quite a bit. The Point line we've talked about, pretty poor defensively. So I will be on some Eichel line for sure in my 20. I don't think it's going to take much to get over the field, but that's one of the lines I would like to have a couple shares of. If I'm wrong and they go up against the Stamkos line, it's not the end of the world, but really want them going up against Point, Johnson, Kucherov because that line is so high event. I don't really like anything else on the Buffalo side, which is not going to be a strong take. I will say, I know Reinhart was up on the top line with Eichel and Skinner, and that's obviously an upgrade, but a little bit more expensive. They would still be, I think, under 19K, or just at 19K, actually, if it was Reinhart up on the top line with Eichel and Skinner, if I'm doing my math correctly there. And it's a fine price. Tampa doesn't have a great penalty kill. I think they have been a little bit better as of late, but I do like Buffalo a little bit here. I'm not saying I'm trying to fade Tampa, but I don't know that I'm even going to get there in my 20 lineups, which is always scary. They bury me, seems like more often than not. Pollute, 3,100, getting up there a little bit. No longer min salary, but still playing a decent amount of minutes, producing okay, and skating with Ristolainen. So I think he's pretty safe as a $3,100 player can be. Not big on Hedman. McDonough's actually coming up for me a little bit at 4,500, and technically you can play him with the Point line. I think they're going to skate a good amount together at even strength, and then he does correlate with Johnson on the PP2, but the PP2 doesn't really matter on Tampa, in my opinion. Goalies here, Ullmark is a guy that I'll take a couple shots on at 6,900. Going to see a ton of shots. Would not recommend going 20% Ullmark or anything like that, but like I think if you're making 150 somehow on FanDuel and he's cheap over there, that would be a guy I'd want to mix in here and there just because shot on goal equity. And this is a somewhat winnable game for Buffalo, even on the back-to-back. I don't think it would be crazy if they did end up winning this game, which maybe some people do think I'm crazy for thinking that. Boston and Toronto, we've got Tuukka Rask going up against Michael Hutchinson. Rask is 7,700. The implied totals for this game, it looks like Boston is at 3.1, Toronto 3.4, 3.5, somewhere in there. Rask, Hutchinson, and Boston won coming off big letdown, at least for me, on was that Wednesday night? No, Thursday night against the Capitals. I like going right back to Boston here. The issue is they're really expensive. There's a couple lines like that. Colorado one is the other one that I'm thinking of, the one that I wrote up. Boston one is matchup proof. They're going to get matched up against Tavares, Marner, and Hyman, I would think. And that kind of opens the door for Matthews, Andreas Johnson, and Kapanen, I think. And even this third line a little bit. The Boston depth isn't all that strong. So I like the Leafs' second and third lines a little bit. Tavares, Marner is fine. They correlate the best. And it's not a bad power play spot for the Leafs. But I'd rather go to Matthews. I think he's just going to get a way, way better even strength matchup, not having to go up against Boston one here. anything else in this game, man, Krug for 5,600, really, really like that. We like defensemen against the Leafs. We've been on that for a couple months now. Homer Cleese pointing that out, and it's gone pretty well targeting defensemen against the Leafs, especially power play one defensemen, that skate with Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak on the power play. That's really all I got for this game. So Toronto 2 is, I think, a very solid play. Boston 1, a line I would like to be able to field on. And I say I like to because I'm probably going to have to choose between them and Colorado 1 as like my road super expensive top line here, because I don't know how much of both I'm going to be able to get to. So we'll see. But I do like the spot for Boston 1 for sure, especially coming off a bad game, even though they did generate a ton. Morgan Riley, 6,300, overpriced. Every time I say that, he goes off, but I don't think I'll be playing him here, so take that for what you will. Colorado and Montreal. We have Semyon Varlamov going up against Carey Price. 2.9 implied total for Colorado. 3.1 for the Montreal Canadiens. So, Montreal did switch up their lines. They added Drouin to the top line, or the Danault line, in lieu of Tatar. So what that does for me is I think it makes them a little bit worse defensively. Drouin, not a great possession guy. Maybe that is more a product of skating more with Domi, but I don't think Drouin's someone that's going to be good defensively, and I think the Danault, Gallagher, Drouin line is going to spend the most time against Colorado 1. And the Danault, Tatar, Gallagher, when they were a trio, which they had been for basically the entire season up till this point, when they were a trio, I looked at their last 12 games, and yeah, maybe a 12-game sample isn't that big, and you could probably it'd probably look better in 15 or maybe in 10, but they are giving up 14 high danger chances against per 60, so they've just been a lot worse defensively, a lot less dominant. They're still generating a ton, but if they're going to go up against Colorado 1 and we're going to get low-owned Colorado 1 and super expensive Colorado 1, then that's even going to create less ownership. They're more expensive than Boston 1. It's a perceived bad matchup, I would think, for most people. Colorado 1, like Boston 1, they're matchup proof for me. So I'm going to try to force in some exposure to Colorado 1. And when I say try to force it in, I'm going to have some Colorado 1 lineups. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Whether it's 2 or 4, that's going to be a choice I'm going to have to make later on today when I start doing my final crunches here. But I would suggest you get some Colorado 1 exposure. It is a good power play spot. Colorado, top 5 in the NHL in power play success rate, and Montreal does commit a decent amount of penalties. They also don't kill them off very well. So a lot of times they get bailed out by Carey Price, but I really do like this spot for Colorado 1. I like it for Tyson Barrie as well. I never really know what to do with these other Colorado defensemen, like Cole, Johnson, Girard. I guess I would give the edge to Johnson there, but he's just a whatever play for me at 3,800, especially in this spot where I want to target the power play. He's not on the power play. On the Montreal side, you've got Domi with Armia and Lehkonen, and it looks like all their power plays are messed up. They've got Kenny Agostino and Paul Byron on the top unit, so this kind of sucks for Montreal. Maybe they get something going with Byron and Agostino and that Kotkaniemi line. They're the only line with 2 power play 1 guys, but do you really want to play those guys? Do you really think that those units are going to stick? Because I'm a little bit skeptical. I think Shea Weber's probably my favorite play on Montreal at this point for 5,200. He hasn't been all that productive as of late, but Colorado commits a ton of penalties. They don't kill them off very well at all. And I just love targeting Colorado, especially when they're on the road here. like I think the line, like I like the Dano, Drouin, Gallagher line, and I could be dead wrong on them facing McKinnon, but I mean, who else are you going to put up against McKinnon here? And they like to hard match too with Dano and Gallagher. So if they weren't going up against McKinnon, I'd probably want to play some Dano, Drouin, and Gallagher, but I don't think I can pull the trigger, assuming I am correct for the most part on the matching here. Yeah, Montreal is just kind of a mess right now in my eyes. So limited lineups, it's going to be tough for me to get to a lot of Montreal here. Varlamov, I do like at 7,600, especially because of the uncertainty here with Montreal. I don't like these line combos. And if they do match the Dano line, I think that it's a pretty big disadvantage for them. All right. Next game, Montreal and Washington. We've got Bobrovsky should be back after his layoff, his probable suspension, whatever it was. He's back with the team. He's expected to go tonight, even though he's not yet confirmed. That's pretty par for the course. 2.75 implied total for Columbus. Looks like 3.25 for Washington, a total of 6 here. Holtby in net for the Caps. The Caps match almost every game. It's going to be Backstrom going up against Dubois, Panarin, and Atkinson, I would think. And then Ovechkin, Wilson, and Kuznetsov should get to go up against Columbus lines 2 and 3. The Wenberg, Duclair, and Bjorkstrand line, if that line stays intact, is very, very bad defensively. Although so is Washington's top line. So I like both sides of that, actually. Obviously, way, way different price points. But Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, Wilson all getting power play time. Ovechkin, Kuznetsov on the top unit. You can leave off Wilson if you want for 6K, especially because he's not on the top power play, because Oshie and Backstrom are there, of course. It's just really hard not to like this matchup for the Caps. So, especially the top line here. I like Jenner, Foligno, and Anderson as well, assuming they get time against Eller, Connolly, and Boyd, and the Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, Wilson line as well. I think that's a pretty well-constructed line. Those guys are all on the power play. They're a better line than Wenberg, Duclair, and Bjorkstrand right now. We've got a little bit of a sample on them. So I like some of the Columbus depth here. You can go to Columbus 1. I don't think I'm going to get there, though. As much as I like targeting the Caps, if I do get to Columbus 1, it would be like a one-share thing when I'm trying to stack 2 mid-tier lines together. So it'd be like a 1 out of 20 type of thing. It wouldn't be heavy exposure at all. Seth Jones and Zach Werenski, it looks like they're messing around with the power plays again. Werenski on the top unit. I don't know if that sticks. I don't know when that was updated, actually, but I'm seeing it at a couple places right now that it's going to be Werenski, or at least it's listed as Werenski on the top unit, which I don't know why you do that. Werenski's fine for 4,800. Because the Caps have a bad penalty kill, they also take a ton of penalties. Carlson at 6K, just the far and away the best option on the Caps. It kept me up to 4,600. This guy was like 3K for the entire season last year and early this year. But has he been producing? Just kind of a random tangent. I don't really want to play Kempney, but let's look at his game log. What is he? I mean, he's playing like 20 minutes a night. You know, he's getting on the score sheet here and there, but I don't understand why he's 4,600. Whatever. I don't think you need to play him. So there's your hot take for the day. Don't play $4,600 Michael Kempney. Goalies here, I'm not really all that interested in. I think Holtby's a little bit overpriced. I don't really like playing Holtby. He stands on his head every once in a while, like you see, like you saw against Boston, which completely buried me. But 8,100 here at home. I'd rather go elsewhere, is all I'll say, like in the next game. Detroit and Minnesota, we've got a 5.5 implied total here, with most of that going to Minnesota, 2.1 to Detroit, 3.4 to the Wild. Jimmy Howard in net against Devin Dubnyk. We've got these new Minnesota lines. We've got Detroit on the back-to-back after they played in Winnipeg last night, lost in Winnipeg. Actually battled pretty tough. I think it was 3-2 at one point. Winnipeg got the empty net goal. So, anyways, Detroit is really a one-line team for me. I didn't see what they did last night. I haven't looked into that game. I didn't see if they kept Bertuzzi up on the top line. It wouldn't really matter all that much. I don't think you need to play Larkin tonight. Let's see what I ended up. I ended up with a little bit of Larkin. He would be the line I'd want to go to. I don't know if that'll stick. I ran 100 lineups, so I ended up on a lot of guys just to see where I'm at, to give myself a bigger sample than 20. But I want to see if they did end up keeping Bertuzzi up on that top line. I know the last couple games he had slid down. It had been Mantha. I wish they would just go to Mantha with Larkin and Nyquist. That would be a pretty fun line to play in DFS, especially at low ownership. Let's see where we're at here. So this is just Natural Stat Trick if any of you guys aren't familiar with it. Great site. Wow, they did keep... Man, they... Okay, high danger chances, whatever, but they did generate 6 scoring chances at even strength. Wow. That's a really good line, even with Bertuzzi up there. Larkin and Nyquist, like Steve's been on it. Homercles, he's been on it. When they're together, like Detroit sucks, but that line is not matchup proof, but they're almost always in play because of their pricing. And you'd rather not face the Koivu line, but they are cheap enough where I think as a filler stack you can go to them. That's probably a little bit of a cop out there, but who knows? Maybe I do end up with a little bit of Larkin here. He's really all they got. The rest of these lines are putrid. The more entertaining part of this game for DFS for a lot of people is what do you do with the Minnesota lines here? So you've got Koivu, Zucker, Granlund. That line looked pretty good in their game against Winnipeg. Limited Winnipeg very well. They're probably going to see a lot of ice time here, which I think is something that I need to take into account more. My projections do for sure, but just like mentally, like play like some of these lines that get 18, 19, 20 minutes some games. These shutdown lines, especially with offensive talent. So Koivu not included, and he doesn't have a lot of offensive talent. But Granlund and Zucker do, and they're on the top power play. So that line is fine. I think they're going to be chalky, though. So I'm looking more at the Stahl, Greenway, and Niederreiter line, and the Coyle, Parisi, Cunnin line as well. So Stahl, Niederreiter, and Greenway, they're 11-6 to stack. And I think that's, first of all, a really good price. And they're all on the power play in some fashion. Greenway kind of on and off of it. So, you don't need power play 2 exposure from this team, especially looks like they got it pretty stacked up with Stahl, Parisi, Granlund, Zucker, and then Suter. But it's always nice to add in, even if it's 30, 40 seconds a night on power play 2, that's fine for 2,800. Anyways, I think that line has really awesome matchups. Same thing with Coyle, Parisi, and Cunnin. You look at what this Detroit 2 line has done, and then this Detroit 3 line, even worse. So I'll pull it up just as a reference point here. But Detroit 2 and 3, the third line, small sample, but it's Athanasiou, Clendening, and Darren Helm. So you can expect these numbers to be somewhat similar in the long run because these are just not very good players, not very good defensive players. Athanasiou, I think, is fine on the right line, but 62.1 Corsi against per 60. The second line, the Mantha, Nielsen, and Vanek line, again, short sample, but 66.8 Corsi against per 60. Scoring chances, they're both over 31 per 60. High danger chances, they're both over 15.5 per 60. Again, I'll stress short samples, but everyone's going to look at Koivu, Zucker, Granlund here, rightfully so. But they're going to, it's not easy to shut down Larkin and Nyquist together. That's a really good line. So the path of least resistance here would be the Stahl line and the Coyle Parisi and Cunnin line. So 3 lines in play here for Minnesota, similar to what we've got with the Sharks in the later game. And that game, like this one, and even more so, is going to be super, super, super popular. So do with that what you will. I think you're going to see really low ownership for Greenway and Niederreiter compared to Stahl, and maybe Greenway especially. Whereas this line I think is going to be pretty balanced. You might get them at 10, 11, 12% for each of the 3. Like this is going to end up being like a 4 or 5% owned stack because people aren't going to be on Greenway as much as they are going to be on Stahl. And same thing here. People are going to play Parisi, not as much Coyle, and a lot of people are just going to leave off Cunnin. So I'm going to even strength stack tonight in my 20, and I will have exposure to these really low owned guys on teams that are somewhat chalky. Suter, DK, just begging you to play him once again. He's not really doing all that much, but the power play here is a really awesome spot for the Wild. He plays 26 minutes a night. He's got 7 straight games with exactly 1 shot on goal, which is impressive. Doesn't really attempt a ton of shots, but 4,300 playing with really talented players on power play 1. Hard to say he's not at least an okay value. I don't know what kind of upside he has here. His upside is assist equity, so play him in correlation to Minnesota lines. I would try to get away from Suter as a one-off here because, like I said, his value is really tied to the forwards doing most of the damage. Spurgeon for 5,300 I think is a very good play. I would like to see him on power play 1 here, but he's not there. He would be the guy I would want a one-off because he has more upside on his own than a guy like Suter, and they're priced appropriately, I think. Nothing really on the Detroit side for defensemen. Like I mentioned, though, I could see myself getting to a Larkin, Nyquist, Bertuzzi stack or 2. I hate Saturday on DK, $40. Yeah, terrible GPPs. I agree, Striker, if you're watching. That's coming from our premium Slack chat right there. All right, next game. Golden Knights, Chicago Blackhawks. Marc-Andre Fleury, likely going to start for the Golden Knights. He almost always does. Colin Delia for the Blackhawks here. This one pretty one-sided as well. The difference is it's one-sided towards the away team. 3.4 implied total for the Golden Knights. 2.7, 2.6 for the Chicago Blackhawks. Interesting note here, Brandon Peary skated on the top line with Carlson and Marchessault, and then Pacioretty was down with Stastny and Tuck. That doesn't really do all that much for me, except it makes Vegas 2 a little bit more affordable. Obviously, it makes Vegas 1 a little bit more expensive. They're both going to get awesome matchups against the Blackhawks. They like to hard match with the Taves line. The Taves line is brutal defensively. Super high event both ways, but can definitely target them. So I love the Vegas top line. I like the Vegas second line. I just much prefer Carlson and Marchessault if I'm stacking guys up on Vegas. I almost always defer to them if it's close at all. The Kane line, not good defensively either. Keep an eye on the Chicago lines, because now that I'm thinking of it, they did have DeBrincat up with Taves and Cahoon. That would be a line that I would like to go to. I would like to be early on that line. I think DeBrincat's awesome, and he's 5,700, so his price isn't going to jump out to people. But you could see DeBrincat back up with Taves and Cahoon. I think that would be a pretty interesting line to go to, making them even more high event, and DeBrincat's very good. So better than Saad right now. I don't think that's outrageous at all. Let's see what they did. Actually, now that I'm thinking of it. How are we doing on time, too? Oh, it doesn't matter. Let's see what the Hawks did. They had DeBrincat with Taves and Cahoon the whole game. See, they generated a good amount. They gave up. This should point you to Vegas 1 and Vegas 2 for that matter. This should as well. So they're going to play super high event no matter whether it's Saad or DeBrincat on that top line. I would prefer it be DeBrincat. Has anybody seen the Blackhawks lines the last couple days? I wonder if Daily Faceoff just didn't update, because I'm not seeing anything for Hawks lines from yesterday. But maybe our Hawks guy, that's not myself, Vots, maybe he knows. So hit him up in Slack. Maybe he saw something. He's also got a really good Twitter beats list that you can go to and get all this information from the beat writers straight from the source. All right. We'll scoot through these next few games. I like Yoki at 2,700, especially if he skates with Keith. He did not skate with Keith last game. So, again, keep an eye on the Blackhawks lines here. Theodore would be the guy I want to go to. I think a really good value against the Hawks, who have a terrible penalty kill. I think the worst in the league, or bottom 3 for sure. And he goes with Marchessault and Carlson on the PP. So, next game, Blues and Stars. We've got Binnington and Ben Bishop for their teams. 2.5 implied total for St. Louis, 3.0 for the Stars. Shocker here. Dallas 1 for me is going to be in play. Haven't decided how much exposure I want to them. I'm probably going to keep it under control. I'm not going all in on Dallas 1. I've learned my lesson here. I don't think it's that great of a spot either. They've been, they're just a really, really good line. They just project incredibly well for me, especially when they're at home. They've been matching the Pitlick line against opposing top competition, so Pitlick, Faxa, and Como. While it doesn't really strike fear into you, they are pretty good at slowing teams down. So, like St. Louis 1 is super cheap. I would be cautious with them. Dallas, overall, they do a pretty good job of slowing down the pace when they're at home. That Pitlick line, like I mentioned, not a pushover there. So people will be swooned by the low price on St. Louis. I'm just not going overboard with either side here because that kind of leaves the Sagan line to go up against O'Reilly, Perron, and Sanford. And even if the Sagan line goes up against Shen, Schwartz, and Tarasenko, that could be a situation where they kind of cancel each other out. Two very good lines going head-to-head. And then there's just not a ton else to talk about here. Klingberg, 5,800 is fine, but if I'm going up that high, well, first of all, I'd rather go to a guy like Tyson Barrie, save a few dollars. I'd rather go to a guy like Torrey Krug, save a few $100s, and Pietrangelo, kind of the same thing. Just a bunch of guys in this range. So if they're your guy, go ahead. If you want to correlate, go 4-3-1 with one of these teams. That's also fine. But just not my favorite guys tonight. Let's see. We've got Ottawa, San Jose. All right, this is the game that everyone wants to talk about. Rightfully so. We've got Anders Nilsson getting the displeasure of going up against the Sharks and Martin Jones. 6.5 total here. 2.1 going to Ottawa, like 4.3, 4.4 going to San Jose here. San Jose, best spot on the night as a team. So Burns, Carlson, maybe the 1-2 defensive plays of the night. Probably the 1-2 defensive plays of the night. Burns is my number one by a good margin. Carlson pretty much right behind him. Any projection system you use, they're going to grade out exceptionally well. Even for those prices, they're still not high enough. And then they're going to have even more inflated ownership and probably not even enough ownership. They're probably going to still come in under own, even if they're like 20-25%. They just make it so much easier to feel good about your correlation if you're stacking even strength lines for the Sharks, because you've got Pavelski, Thornton, and Hurdle all on separate lines, and then no power play correlation on any of these top 3 lines. So my favorite line here, I'm giving a slight edge to Couture, Timo Meier, and Radil. I think they're going to come in lower ownership. Radil especially, he's going to come in at, fraction of the ownership of Couture and Timo Meier. And then Donskoy, kind of the same thing, but that line's been making a little bit more noise. Kane's been on a hot streak, so I think that line's going to come in the highest owned for the Sharks. But don't be fooled by that being SJ3. That's a really good line. So I think people have caught on to that. Like, just because they're listed as the third line, don't put any weight in that. They're playing top 6 minutes. They're awesome. They're going to get very good matchups here. There's really no bad matchups against the Ottawa Senators these days. The Thornton line, they're okay. I don't think I'll end up on them in 20 lineups. It's going to be mostly the quote-unquote second and third lines for me here. And then all the Burns, as much Carlson as I can get. If I can't get to Burns, so like as a reference point, I got 80% Burns, just running uncorrelated defensemen and even strength stacks. And then with that, 59% Carlson. And then everyone else besides Yoki, the punt for the Chicago Blackhawks, everyone else under 8%. So, yeah, by far my top 2 defensemen. I don't think I'm saying anything crazy there. Just play them. Play them both if you can in the same lineup. They're the best. They're the best plays tonight. Don't get cute and try to, maybe they won't be the highest scoring defenseman, but I don't know how they both don't get you at least 5 or 6 DK points and probably a lot more. One of them's gonna go. One of them could easily get 10 plus DK points. So I'm gonna have a ton of exposure to both, is what I'm trying to say here. And you should probably too. Nothing on the Senators side, I don't think. I'm just not gonna end up there on a large slate. If I was running a ton more lineups, I would end up with some Ottawa 1, but I think they're gonna get trounced here. So sad for Anders Nilsson. That is one of the biggest totals I've seen. The 4.3, 4.4 for the Sharks. I think that might be the biggest total of the season, and they definitely deserve it. All right, a couple more games here, then we'll get out. Arizona and Edmonton. Goalies unknown for this game. Probably going to be Kemper and Cam Talbot. Comeback win for the Oilers last game. I'm sure they ride it out. New lines for the Oilers. New/old lines, actually. McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, Ty Ratty, Draisaitl split up. You can just go McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, Draisaitl. Hitchcock said one of the beat writers tweeted out for Edmonton that Hitchcock said these are the lines to start the game, and he emphasized like to start the game. So things are going to get mixed up. When that happens, or when you think that's going to happen, which it does a lot, just play the guys that correlate to McDavid. I would be a little bit wary of Ratty, but he is 2,800. Even if he plays, if he plays a couple minutes with McDavid, he's probably worth it at 2,800. Like if they get one goal, if he gets an assist or something, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do with Ratty here. The power play's tough. The penalty kill is awesome for the Arizona Coyotes here. That's why I don't usually get to teams facing them all that much. But I'm definitely going to have a couple shares of Edmonton 1. McDavid's super expensive, but Nugent-Hopkins, and then you can go with Chason, or you can just go with Draisaitl and just stack up the 3 best parts of Edmonton. You could go with Darnell Nurse if you're not running just full even strength lines. Just play the guys that correlate to McDavid, because who knows who's going to be on his or I should say, play the best players. Who knows who's going to be on McDavid's line from shift to shift? Edmonton is just the worst. On the other side, I wasted my Galchenyuk, Garland, and Nick Cousins stack. I had them in the 894 the other day, which is probably the biggest fish play that anyone made that day. But if Boston 1 would have given me anything, it would have paid off. I do actually like that line again. They're just crazy cheap. They're going to see the depth of the depth for Edmonton. And that's obviously a matchup you want to exploit. Power play one time for Galchenyuk and Garland. Sign me up for a little bit of that. Like, if you're going to Colorado 1, you probably can fit in Tyson Barrie and a decent goalie with Arizona 3. So I like that. I like the even strength stack. Going to end up with probably a couple shares of this Arizona 3 line. You can go to the top line, I think, but they're going to spend the most time against McDavid. So, again, path of least resistance. Limited lineups for me. I would pass probably on Arizona's top line, and then the second line is just, they're whatever. I just want the third line. Garland's been on fire. Galchenyuk's been generating quite a bit as well. No clue what you're going to get from Nick Cousins. I wouldn't expect him to chip in all that much, but I wasted the Nick Cousins goal game, which would have been epic to bank with Nick Cousins, but didn't quite get there with the rest of my lineup. All right. Anything else? Chikrin, I do like a little bit outside of Ekman Larson, but I always mention the power play 1 guys. Chikrin's a guy that I think is fine as like a standalone play for 4,400. All right, Pittsburgh and LA, and then we'll get out of here. We have Casey DeSmith and Jonathan Quick. Murray started yesterday, and I would expect it to be DeSmith today. Pittsburgh on the back-to-back. Kings play at a snail's pace. Kopitar probably going to go up against Crosby, Gensel, and Rust. We're not going to have chalk Kings here. I don't even think playing the Kings is a terrible idea. I just don't know if I can mentally do it here. If I'm going to a line, I want cheap Kings. I don't want the Kings to. I don't want to be rooting for 2 or 3 goals from a Kings line, them to be priced up. So I guess the line that's somewhat sticking out to me is the Carter Iafallo Lipsick line. This is another one that fits in if you're going with Boston 1, if you're going with Colorado 1, and you just need a mega cheap line with a good even strength matchup. And they get some power play time too. I think that they're fine. Probably going to see time against Malkin, Simone, and Tanner Pearson, which went off last night. I don't know if they did all their damage at even strength or what, but they even could see some time against Brassard, Kessel, and Sheehan, which, you know my thoughts on that line. They are pretty brutal defensively. I don't really like the Penguins here. They're just so split up. Gensel back on the top power play, I think that's fine, but they're going up against Kopitar on a 10-game slate. I'm just not going to get to this price point. So it's just a price thing for me. It's having limited lineups. I don't really enjoy any Pittsburgh here. Letang above 6K. You can literally pay $100 more for this man right here, Erik Karlsson. So I don't think there's any reason to do that. Find the extra 100. Go to Karlsson. Don't overthink this one, in my opinion. All right. And, maybe you could argue that I'm overthinking it by playing Carter, Iafallo, and Lipsick. I think that'd be a pretty fair assessment. All right, that's about it for this slate. Quick is fine if he goes for 6,900. He just doesn't get that much help from his team is the issue. But $6,900 home goalie against a team on a road back-to-back. It's scary, but I'm probably going to have some Jonathan Quick exposure. Going to be a rough late-night hammer here if you're betting on Kings. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thanks to the few of you that came by. Promo code Hit the Ice gets you 50% off your first month of an Osmo.com NHL premium package. Use that if you're interested in the product. Sign up for monthly, you get 50% off. You can sign up for all access. You can sign up for whatever you want. Promo code Hit the Ice is the one you use. Give us a like if you do enjoy this show. Helps us continue to be able to do this for free. So that would be how we would prefer. SJ3 again, Gus says, could be. I like the second line just a little bit more. But yeah, thanks for showing up, guys. Good luck in your NFL lineups of PGA, if you're sweating PGA or NBA, whatever you're doing. We've got content for it on Osmo.com, so go check out all of the tabs, PGA, NFL, NBA. I'm going to go do some NFL stuff right now, then work on my NHL stuff for tonight. So should be a fun day in sports. Good luck, guys. Make some money.